Let's talk with Senator Lindsey Graham, Republican of South Carolina, who joins us from Clemson. Senator, thank you so much for being here on this holiday weekend.
Thank you.
Let me just start with the president's trip. He just wrapped up a 9-day visit to Europe and the Middle East. This is how he summed up his trip. Take a listen.
Through strength, and that's what we're going to have. We're going to have a lot of strength, and we're going to have a lot of peace.
So you've been highly critical of the president's plan to cut funding for the State Department. What do you make of the president's argument that beefing up the military should be the priority?
Well, it really should be, and I support the arms sale to Saudi Arabia. We need to beef up our allies' ability to help us in the war on terror. I thought it was overall a good trip, reassured Israel, good message to Saudi Arabia. NATO needs to pay more, but is probably the wrong venue at the 9/11 memorial. But soft power was your question. 29% reduction in State Department funding. That takes soft power off the table. All the things we've done in Africa to eradicate AIDS has compromised our ability to help partners like Jordan, frontline states like the Ukraine and the Baltic nations have really been severely limited. So destroying soft power does not make us safer. And that's what his budget does.
Senator, let's turn to the bombshell report from the Washington Post that Jared Kushner and the Russian ambassador discussed the possibility of setting up secret communications channel with Moscow. And Evan McMullin, the former Republican staffer who had a brief run for president, he tweeted that the report is, quote, treasonous activity, whether born of malice, naivete, or both. Do you see it that way?
Well, number one, we're chasing our tails as a nation when it comes to the Russians. I don't know who leaked this supposed conversation, but just think about it this way. You got the ambassador of Russia reporting back to Moscow on an open channel, hey, Jared Kushner is going to move into the embassy. I don't trust this story as far as I can throw it.
In what way? Why don't you trust it?
I think it makes no sense that the Russian ambassador would report back to Moscow on a channel that he most likely knows we're monitoring. The whole storyline is suspicious. I've never been more concerned and suspicious about all things Russia than I am right now. So I'm not going to jump to the conclusion that Mr. McMullin jumped to.
So you think that it is possible that what the ambassador Kislyak said to Moscow was on purpose because he knew that he was being monitored?
That's a possibility. Well, look at it this way. Apparently, the FBI director intervened in the elections in July 2016 based on a fake email generated by the Russians from the Democrats to the Department of Justice trying to shut down the email investigation of Clinton. If that was fake, why don't you think this is fake? I'm not so sure the email that Comey relied upon was fake, but I can tell you this. He never briefed the Congress, the Judiciary Committee, about any fake email. What he told the Intelligence Committee about this email, he never suggested it was fake. So if he intervened in the election based on fake information generated by the Russians, that was an incredibly incompetent thing to do. So I don't really know who to believe anymore.
You said recently that you want to know more about President Trump's business dealings and any potential ties to Russia. Is it time to subpoena the president's tax return, Senator?
We're not there yet, but I do want to know where they got their money in 2008 and 9 when most people were struggling with their real estate investments. But back to Comey, this is a huge deal. There's a report out now by CNN that the FBI director knew that the information he relied upon to jump into the 2016 election was fake, that he basically took over the Department of Justice's job based on a fake email from the Russians. That, to me, is a stunning story. From a Congress's point of view, he never told us it was fake, so he needs to be held accountable. And if it is not fake, we need another investigation.
Senator, if I may follow up, because that was our reporting, he allegedly didn't tell Congress it was fake or not, or didn't matter to him whether or not he told Congress is one thing. That's separate. Because
matters to me.
Because he felt that he couldn't talk about it anyway because it would give up sources and methods. You don't buy that?
No, because he did talk to Congress about it. He didn't talk to the Judiciary Committee. He talked to members of the Senate and House Intel Committee that he was sitting on emails that the Russians had between the Democratic Party and the Department of Justice that were highly explosive. That was the main reason he jumped in July to take over the investigation, because he thought the Department of Justice was compromised, and he never once told a member of the House or the Senate that he thought the email was fake. If he did, in fact, believe it was fake, he should have shared that with the Congress, because we have oversight over him. I can't imagine a scenario where it's okay for the FBI director to jump in the middle of an election based on a fake email generated by the Russians and not tell the Congress.
Can I just follow up on what I asked you about tax returns? You're talking
Sure.
about the fact that you have a lot of doubts about the issues and the questions surrounding the president and his aides and so forth. But a tax document should not be something that is questionable. It is a legal document. So why
Right.
is it too soon to take a look at those tax returns and use your power in Congress to subpoena them?
Number one, I don't have any business dealing before me between the Trump Organization and Russia that seems to be inappropriate. Do I want to look and see if they are? Yes. Now we got the special counsel. I don't want to get in his lane. The special counsel, Mr. Mueller, has independent responsibilities to investigate all things Russia. So does the Congress. We need a deconfliction meeting.
Yep.
But I want to get back to the idea that the FBI director's decision to jump into the election and say that Hillary Clinton did not commit a crime, but she was pretty much incompetent, was based on a fake email from Russia. He never told anybody in Congress, which is stunning. And at the end of the day, if the Russians are this sophisticated, we need more sanctions yesterday against the Russians. Or is, in fact, this a true email? I want to get to the bottom of it. I want to see the email.
Before I let you go, Senator, President Trump seems to be leaning towards leaving the Paris Agreement on climate change. During
Right.
your presidential campaign, you challenged your fellow Republicans on this issue of climate science. Do you think it would be a mistake for President Trump to pull out of the Paris Agreement?
It's a voluntary agreement. It doesn't require cap and trade measures to be imposed on our economy. It's all voluntary. If I were him, I would stay in the agreement and make it a better deal for worldwide business interests to improve the climate, better deal for business. But if he does withdraw, that would be a definitive statement by the president that he believes climate change is a hoax. Stay in the deal, make it a better deal would be my advice.
And so if he pulls out, what does that mean to you?
Well, it means that the leader of the Republican Party is in a different spot than the rest of the world. It would be taken as a statement that climate change is not a problem, not real. That would be bad for the party, bad for the country. Stay in the agreement because it's voluntary, and try to make the world respond to better business practices when it comes to cleaning up carbon.
Senator Lindsey Graham, thank you so much for joining me. Appreciate it.
Thank you.